Hi guys, we're Team 10 and we're here today to present to you about Adidas's All In or Nothing campaign for the 2014 World Cup. The 2014 World Cup was in Brazil, but we're going to be focusing on France for our host country because that's where Adidas launched their campaign. So first, we will get into a little bit of the situation analysis. So they were presented with the opportunity to become the most talked about brand of the 2014 World Cup. This was obviously a really big task because lots of competitors were launching similar campaigns with the same goal and pouring tons of money into them, including rival Nike, who has a really similar brand in Europe and a lot of loyalty as well. And this was actually commonly referred to as the first true social media World Cup, which makes this a really interesting campaign to study because right before the 2014 World Cup, a lot of social media platforms gained a lot of users and popularity. So this was the first time that brands were able to measure their campaigns on social media in terms of how many people are using hashtags or talking about their brand. And it was also a really good way to gauge audience sentiment and how they were feeling about campaigns and things like that. So this makes it a really interesting campaign to study because now in international PR, we obviously recognize that social media is a really important way to connect with international audiences and build those relationships. So some of the internal factors about the company are the mission and values. So Adidas's mission is to be the global leader in the sporting goods industry with brands built on a passion for sports and a sporting lifestyle. Their values are performance, passion, integrity, and diversity. And some background about the company. So Adidas is a German multinational company founded in 1949 by Adi Dassler. Their branding actually traces back to the 1954 World Cup, which is pretty interesting, when Germany played Hungary in the finals. The German national team was using Adidas shoes, which were actually half the weight of a common football boot, which allowed the players to be a lot faster and beat Hungary in the finals. So it's kind of cool that they really stayed on brand with this campaign and their goals of becoming the most talked about brand after that was kind of their origin. So some external factors of France include government. So France is a republic with an executive, legislative, and judicial branch. They're a high context culture, which I'll get into a little more later, but essentially that just means that they communicate in a lot of nonverbal and symbolic ways rather than explicitly stating all their important information. They have a lot of protections for freedom of the press in their constitution. And their laws that punish journalists are mostly just defamation laws, which wouldn't really affect this campaign at all, but it's just good to know. Another big external factor to understand for this campaign is the context of the bus of shame, which is what their launch is focused around. So the bus represents the 2010 World Cup, where their player Nicolas Anelka was sent home by the French Football Federation because of a dispute during a match. And the bus is symbolic of the bus that the World Cup team sat on while they refused to train because they disagreed with the decision so much. And it also represents the end of the World Cup dreams for France in 2010. So there was a lot of disconnect in that time between players and coaches and fans. So it's definitely a symbol of shame for French soccer fans. And Adidas chose to destroy this bus in front of a huge crowd at their event launch in France, in hopes that it would be symbolic of unifying the country now and going forward for the 2014 World Cup. So relating back to the idea of the high context culture, this is important because it was probably really effective for them to destroy it in front of everyone in a symbolic way instead of just talking about how the brand was related to it and how important it was. Now I'm going to discuss a few of Hofstede's cultural dimensions that we've talked about in class and how they relate to our host country of France. So France has high power distance, which is basically means that they expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. So French citizens are pretty used to inequality and hierarchy in their society. They're also an individualist culture, which means that they are pretty much mostly expected to look out for their family and friends and immediately instead of the culture and community as a whole. And according to Hofstede Insights, this is a unique combination with high power distance because one thing you can take away from it is that they really like strong leadership in times of crisis. And this could really relate to the campaign because Adidas chose to be a leader in terms of destroying the bus and leading them in a new unified direction, which was probably a really good move for French culture. Also, on the masculine-feminine spectrum, France is much more feminine, which is important to know because the masculine side values more competition as a form of success, and the feminine side values high quality of life and enjoyment of what you're doing. So this is important to relate to the campaign because when there was all of that lack of unity and controversy revolving around the 2010 World Cup, that was probably really disappointing to French football fans because they are hoping for their team to really enjoy playing and be really passionate. So that's good to know moving forward to the 2014 World Cup. They also have high uncertainty avoidance, which basically means that they enjoy planning and knowing what's to come. So again, relating back to the 2010 World Cup and that bus of shame, that was really shocking. Their team was supposed to be really good that year. And all of that that came out with the player being sent home and everything must have been very shocking and disconcerting for them. They also have high long-term orientation, which again means that they plan for the future, they're thrifty, they take things as they come. And this is important to know when operating in a host country as well. And then last but not least, on the indulgence versus restraint spectrum, they're pretty in the middle, which is good to know when you're a company like Adidas selling sportswear stuff, because they are not really indulgent, so they're not likely to buy things that they don't really need or see strong value in. So now moving into the Corruption Perceptions Index. We've studied this in class, but in relation to France, they rank number 23 in the world on the CPI, and they have a score of 70 for 2018. So 100 is very clean, so their score of 70 is definitely above average and a good score. And their score has ranged from 69 to 71 from the years 2012 to 2018. So it's pretty stable and not really a fluctuating score there with their perception of corruption. And Adidas' home country of Germany is ranked number 12 in the world, so it's definitely slightly better than France, but they're both similar. And they're both part of the best performing region, which is Western Europe, according to Transparency International, which has an average score of 66. So some things we can take away from this are that they have protections in this region for freedom of the press, which is really important when you're trying to gain earned media coverage. And also, there's not much perception of corruption in the government or public sector, which is really important too, because if the government didn't agree with your tactics or your ideas or thoughts, the perception is that there's not really much that they would do about it, which is good for a campaign. But it's important to remember that the CPI only studies perception of corruption, and it's not really an exact indicator of how much corruption is actually in the country.
Now we're going to discuss the primary and secondary publics for the Adidas 2014 All In or Nothing campaign. So our primary public for this campaign were French football fans. Now, the players of the French team not only represented the French team and the French Football Federation, but they also represented all of France on an international platform that would be the FIFA 2014 World Cup. So it can be really, difficult for all of the fans when the team does something that's considered shameful or embarrassing to all of France, which would have been what they did with the 2010 FIFA World Cup when they hid on the bus during their practice. That was a very dark moment in French football history. And so one of the main objectives of this Adidas campaign was to raise the spirits of the French football enthusiasts and increase team spirit. So they definitely encourage this concept of all in or nothing, meaning that you can't be half-hearted in your endeavors. That technically really applies to all of these athletes who very much so want to win the World Cup, want to represent their country, bring a really good reputation for their football team as a national team on an international level. So the campaign was also very successful for their secondary publics, which we're going to talk about soon, but on an international level, they used a lot of social media, and those media interactions and new content was shared in real time, meaning that it was being uploaded as it was happening. So now we're going to move on to our secondary public, which is the global football fans. Now, one of Adidas's main goals was to be the most talked about brand at the 2014 FIFA World Cup. They really wanted to show that France was starting a new chapter in their history of the sport, and they weren't going to allow the shame of the past to shape their future as a team. So during this time, social media was still a very new presence. It was something that wasn't very utilized on an international level yet. And so this tournament was one of the first times that Adidas really utilized social media to reach a global audience, and it worked. The campaign went viral, and over 1.7 million brand mentions occurred through Twitter, and Adidas gained close to 6 million new followers across all their social media platforms as well. So moving on to stakeholders. Stakeholders technically includes employees, shareholders, and online community members, so technically social media followers on their accounts, and Adidas customers. So Adidas is very ingrained in the FIFA World Cup. It's nothing new that they're becoming involved in this campaign. So they have been the official sponsor and official provider of the match ball for the FIFA World Cup since the 1970s. So it's always been a presence in the games, and people are very familiar and acquainted with Adidas's brand. So that legitimacy and credibility, especially within the host country of France, really carried the brand through the campaign and really allowed the campaign to set new standards and new expectations for the French football team. So it really did help that Adidas was already very well regarded in France and had a very strong loyalty, and a lot of brand loyalty does occur with Adidas. So that's something that we're going to talk about with stakeholder tactics in a few moments. Now we're going to move on to approaches to reach the audience. So as one of France's most well-known brands, as we've been talking about, their very well-known sporting goods brand, Adidas used their positive identity to help rectify that embarrassment from the French from what the French team endured during the 2010 FIFA World Cup. So they utilized the bus of shame, which was when the players decided to leave practice and go sit on the bus and protest. They decided to use that bus of shame to create a viral video content, but also to really connect with stakeholders and traditional media sources such as TV and newspapers, as well as opinion leaders, so people who are leading the discussion on social media. So they invited the press and these opinion leaders to attend the destruction of the bus. Now, the destruction of the bus really was all out, or should we say all in. So in this case, they had a crane come in, they had the bus laid out in front of a crowd of people. They had a very large banner in the background that said all in or nothing, and then also a banner that had a Adidas's logo right next to it. So the scope of the campaign was very all-in as well. Now the Adidas team posted content in real time during the tournament, and they also shared key moments as well as updates during the different games that were going on. So the team used a combination of planned, anticipated, and reactive content. When we talk about reactive content, we're kind of talking about the celebration or the types of outcomes that would come from the games and how the audience would want to perceive it. So Adidas would share all the game outcomes on their social media platforms. And the all-in hashtag had over 917,000 mentions on Twitter during the tournament. So moving on to approaches to reach the stakeholders. Adidas took a big risk at the end of one of their all-in or nothing advertisements. This was a video advertisement that was launched in 2014 around the same time as the World Cup, maybe right before it, and the final screen of the ad that ran asked viewers to either click a button that read all in or nothing. To give a little bit of content for a minute, we're going to go back to talk about the advertisement itself. It did not feature any of Adidas's products. It only featured players from different national teams. So it was definitely marketed or targeting that global audience, so that secondary public is what it was looking towards, because it definitely featured an array of different teams, an array of different players. These players during the video were in really intense clips of either training, scoring goals, interacting with fans, cheering on the field. So it was a very kind of a hype video for the FIFA World Cup. And so now when we look back at the final screen that comes up, it has not really a question, more so a statement that says make a choice, and two buttons, one that says all in and the other that says nothing. And what would happen is when audience members clicked on the all in button, they were immediately connected to World Cup updates through Adidas's Twitter accounts, as well as customer relationship management initiatives, or CRM initiatives. So it was really kind of a small challenge to stakeholders, asking them, are you going to be loyal to our brand, or do you want to see what happens during the FIFA 2014 World Cup? Come join us on this journey. So it definitely wasn't allowing stakeholders to sit on the edge of their seats. It wanted them to have an active role in this campaign as well. So moving on to some unique approaches overall, definitely the destruction of the bus of shame. It really did function as a special event in the community, and I would like to take a moment to clarify the difference between a special event and a publicity stunt. So special events are really a form of interpersonal strategic tactics. So a publicity stunt more or less really wants to gain the attraction of the media. It wants to have, kind of that one-time big media hit where everyone's looking at it, everyone's clicking on it, everyone's reading those articles, but after that it kind of fizzles out. And a publicity stunt really only attracts the attention of the media and an audience's attention for a very short span of time, and sometimes they're seen as with a kind of a negative connotation. So for a special event really seeks to connect the audience or public with the company's brand and what the company stands for. So this special event in particular allowed the publics to gather, and they also invited traditional forms of media such as news outlets and newspapers to directly interact with Adidas by watching what happened to the bus of shame. So Adidas invited the media, they attended the event, and another very unique approach during this campaign to reach their audiences was posting content in real time to connect with fans. This again was one of the first sporting events to really be present on social media, so posting and sharing content was still rather new, but the media team took, I believe it was about 6 months to really create an editorial playbook that contained all the content that they wanted to post during the tournament, and also the content that they wanted to use to reach their specific audiences. And with that, we'll move on to the campaign overview.
So to give you a little bit of a campaign overview, in 2014, the German sportswear brand Adidas launched its All or Nothing campaign 2 weeks before the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. As a global football leader and one of France's favorite sports brands, the powerful mantra All in or Nothing was created to encourage people to adopt an attitude with zero compromise at the dawn of the most popular sport event in the world. All in is the Adidas brand philosophy. So all in or nothing was defined as the expression of the ability to break down its own limits and the essential attitude to give the best of ourselves in key moments. To illustrate the all or nothing mantra, Adidas France created a special campaign launch night in which the bus of shame would be destroyed and reborn as a piece of art. So to give you an idea of the timeline and budget for the campaign, right after the World Cup draw was made in December of 2013, Adidas created an editorial calendar that mapped out the entire campaign. After over 6 months of content shooting and intricate planning, the campaign officially launched on May 24th of 2014. 2 days later, on May 26th, the bus of shame was destroyed in France. This $57 million campaign lasted from the end of May to the middle of July 2014, during which Adidas worked to be the most talked about brand at the World Cup. The overall goal of the campaign was to increase brand awareness by being the most talked about brand at the World Cup. On a more regional level, Adidas France aimed to illustrate the all in or nothing mantra of the campaign by turning the bus of shame into a symbol of hope rather than failure. One of the main objectives was to use the destruction of the bus of shame to express its brand attitude of all in or nothing, with something spectacular and symbolic during the launch event in France. During the 2010 FIFA World Cup South Africa, the French Football Federation sent home player Nicolas Anelka for abusing the national coach. The 2010 French World Cup team sat on a bus and refused to train in protest of the decision. Thus, the bus became known as the Bus of Shame, a symbolic representation of the end of the World Cup dream for the French. As Alexia said before, the disconnect between the players, coaches, and staff made it a really chaotic and divided time for the team and its fans. The destruction of the bus would serve as an opportunity for the French to move past what many of them found to be a very dark chapter in their lives. So during the event, Adidas literally destroyed the Bus of Shame to make it reborn a few days later as a piece of art. This bus would serve as a reminder of what disunity and internal struggles can do to a team, and was a representation of the French learning from their past failures. Adidas connected with the French audience by choosing to incorporate something symbolic and exclusively meaningful to their culture as part of the larger All in or Nothing campaign. By turning the Bus of Shame into a symbol of hope rather than failure and embarrassment, Adidas got French fans enthusiastic about joining together on a new united front and moving forward. Hundreds of media and opinion leaders attended the destruction of the controversial bus to witness its rebirth as the piece of art and be a part of the beginning of a new, brighter chapter for the soccer team. In addition, the All in or Nothing campaign, its use of social media to reach the global audience and spread brand awareness was an imperative tactic to the campaign's overall success. So many people refer to the 2014 FIFA World Cup as the first true social media World Cup. Adidas competed with many other sports brands, mainly Nike of that year, for a share of voice and to be the brand that everyone was talking about that year. With 1.7 million brand mentions and 967,000 hashtag uses on Twitter, 32 million views of the tournament content on YouTube, and nearly 6 million fans added to the Adidas global social channels. Overall, the All in or Nothing campaign strategies helped Adidas achieve its goal of being the most talked about brand at the 2014 FIFA World Cup. So All in or Nothing was all about an incentive to move forward. The public destruction of the bus was a true illustration of the campaign tagline and its mantra. Through transforming a symbol of failure into a piece of art, Adidas definitely succeeded in changing the way people remember the Bus of Shame. Not only did it achieve its overall campaign goal of being the most talked about brand, but Adidas was also able to achieve its more regional goal of bringing new meaning to the Bus of Shame in France. Rather than focusing on promoting and advertising a new Adidas product for the French to enjoy, Adidas used the campaign to really embody and bolster the French spirit at a time when they really needed it the most.
Now we're going to focus on the implementation and use of messages and communication tools. Included on this slide is a video of the bus destruction. The bus was the central part of this campaign, and having the video put up on YouTube and pictures of it on the Adidas website was a way to get the public's attention. According to Adidas' website, this gesture from the brand was a way to move forward. The public destruction of this bus is a true illustration of all in or nothing. The border between victory and defeat is very tight, but the consequences and fail can be tragic. The Bus of Shame shows this all together, how a spark can change the destiny of a hero team to a hated team. Adidas has definitely turned the page of the Bus of Shame by transforming this failure symbol into a piece of art.
You need to leave your regrets behind, forever. Otherwise you can't win a World Cup. That's this evening's message. By destroying this bus from Knysna, the shame that haunts French football since 2010, we hope to free the team of bad energy so they can win. We have 9 wonderful teams, including the world champions, European champions Spain, Asian champions Japan, and African champions Nigeria. We have the Americas champion Mexico. So you see, it isn't quantity that counts, but quality. If you add to that Germany, one of the strongest teams in Europe, Argentina, the country of Leo Messi, I think that we're covered to win this World Cup as usual.
So as you can see through the video, it really serves as a great communication tool for people not there or later down the line as ourselves to see how this event actually transpired. The event of destroying the bus served as a great communication tool for this campaign. The world was able to see how this event happened, and word was also able to spread as hundreds of media and opinion leaders showed up to the destruction event. Other communication tools can be found on Adidas's website. For example, as you can see in the left-hand corner came directly from their website, and it's a press release and contact information. The press release is effective because along with describing the campaign, it gave a brief history about the significance of the event, which really ties the whole thing together. It lays out the whole picture while including the necessary parts of a press release, like the boilerplate and Adidas contact information. We can see in our present day how effective communication tools can be in helping or hurting a campaign. By using social media through videos of the destruction of the bus and traditional PR tools like the press release, Adidas was able to reach a large audience and communicate the key messages of this campaign. So now we're going to focus on the circuit of culture. The circuit of culture is the 5 interlinked moments at which culture is meaningful. They include production, consumption, regulation, representation, and identity. Looking at representation, it's a visual aspect of the culture. It is the form an object takes and the meaning encoded in that form. Looking specifically at this campaign, the bus's shame serves as the visual aspect. The bus's shame represents failure. Destroying the bus serves as a new start for French supporters. Now looking at regulation. Regulation is when you ask yourself, is this activity legal? What kind of certification, acceptance, or rubber stamping do you need before you can get it produced? For this campaign specifically, the destruction of the bus was done by a recycling specialist company. That way it ensured that the destruction was done properly and not just by the company who hasn't had any prior experience with destroying a bus. Another part of the campaign, when you think about it, that needed to be checked was what were they going to be able to do with the bus? So the art that resulted from the destruction of the bus was auctioned to benefit the D'Ambers Association for their socio-educational program, Staged Up, which was really focusing on taking that sports passion and leading it into education and how the two interact. So to make sure they were able to even use the bus as a form of giving, Adidas had to ensure it met the company's corporate giving guidelines. And all of Adidas's regulations can be found on its website. It's important for any PR campaign to check in with legal along the way to make sure everything is being done properly. The next step is consumption. When looking at consumption, it is important to ask, who is the audience, when do they use it, and how do they use it? Within this campaign, the audience was soccer fans, specifically the French supporters. The audience used the destruction of the bus as motivation going into the 2014 World Cup. Now we're going to look at production. Production asks who is making or producing it and what is his or her story. Within the campaign, Adidas put it on. Adidas has a long-standing history with FIFA, which really tied into the whole community and give it a strong backbone so people felt that they were using a trusted brand. Since 1970, Adidas has been supplying the official match ball for all of FIFA World Cup matches. The company's original purpose was to provide athletes with optimal equipment for their sport. And now we're going to look at identity. Identity asks who cares about it and why do they? It's a meaning to all social networks. So for the campaign, this event really appealed to the emotions of French football fans. Media and opinion leaders who attended the destruction of the bus were able to tie the connection of the campaign, all in or nothing, to the company's slogan of impossible is nothing. The brand really focuses on breaking the limit and not being held back. So as it really goes off of perseverance and determination. So now that we really focus in on the campaign, it's important to see the environment the campaign was thrown in. So France has a harsh environment for public relations, specifically international public relations. Trust in business and government is low, according to Pritchard, Ailes, and Barton. And France is a nation that dislikes the entry of any global products into its culture. This low trust and low interest in diversifying makes international relations very difficult in France. Looking at the government aspect, France is a highly centralized country. With it being so highly centralized, most political decisions are taken in Paris and are done through government agencies rather than parliament. The impact of legislation and regulatory measures on corporate communications is growing, especially in areas such as finance, environmental protection, and employment. So looking at public relations as a whole in France, it's important for practitioners to be present in government and policies along with business and the private sector. Like anywhere in the world, being up to date is crucial to make sure your public relations is reaching the audience the way you want it to and not being skewed. Large public relations firms in France include Welcome, Enderby, SC Council, and Cap and Kime PR. A little fun fact I wanted to include is that a difficult month to practice public relations is May because there are 4 bank holidays and this is when many take vacation time. So if you're going to France and looking for public relation campaigns to be coming out, that's not the time. And then the last one I wanted to touch on is the relationship public relation practitioners have with journalists. It kind of mimics the same one that is here in the United States. While it's kind of a friendly tension type of relationship where they work with each other, but they realize each have their own goal and understand each other with that. So it's important to know that public relation practitioners face challenges, and this is anywhere, but using proper public relation practices is what really gets the job done.
So when evaluating the campaign, it was important to look at our analysis, reactions, and recommendations. So for the analysis, Adidas did reach their goal of becoming the most talked about brand at the 2014 FIFA World Cup, which is really significant. They also reached their primary and secondary target publics and used social media as a main platform. They gained almost 6 million new followers across their platforms and got over 1.7 million brand mentions, which are huge. And then as far as our reactions, there were a lot of things that we really liked about the campaign. As we mentioned, France is a high context culture, so it was good that they chose a symbolic launch instead of just talking about it. We love that they made the bus destruction into art and kind of turned it into a positive direction. And it was good that they stayed true to their roots of the World Cup for their brand. As far as our recommendations, they could have conducted preliminary research before they launched the campaign and published it. For example, they could have measured French football fan morale before and after the all in or nothing hashtag and seen how it was affected. And they also could have offered opportunities for players to meet and interact with fans.
In conclusion, Adidas had a very successful campaign. They definitely reached their target publics, and they used tactics such as special events, traditional media coverage, social media content, and real-time updates during the tournament. one really cool poster that we found off to the side of the presentation. It says, "Destiny is not fate. You have a choice. Fear or be feared. Hunt or be hunted. Evolve or die. Now or never. It's black and white. All in or nothing." And that's very much so the overarching theme of their campaign was do or die, very all in or nothing. And that was definitely communicated to their publics, and it was very well received. Our team learned that it's definitely possible to successfully utilize social media as an international platform. Adidas has very much so been a part of the FIFA World Cup the entire time. They've been a sponsor and the provider of the match ball, and so it was very easy to integrate this campaign into a tournament and an event that they're already well known by. We also learned that it's possible to make an opportunity out of a negative event. So especially what happened in 2010 with the French team retreating to that bus of shame, Adidas took that as a new opportunity to rebrand the team as well as their owned company and really bring that to the forefront of the 2014 World Cup to show that France was back better than ever. So Adidas' reputation was definitely a positive influence and helped to reignite team spirit and pride for their country. And with that, we thank you for watching, and here's a list of our sources. Hope you have a good day.